Hello everyone and welcome to the PMP Exam Bootcamp Success Strategies and Tips on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that you may encounter on the PMP exam. Today we are going to discuss how to pass the PMP exam. After investing both time and money in preparing for the PMP exam, it is extremely important that when it comes time to walk into the exam hall, you want to be sure that all of your ducks are in a row. It also doesn't make sense for you to walk into the exam hall with any preconceived ideas that may cause you to be unprepared. My main goal here today is to go over some key areas of focus for preparing for the PMP exam. Let's get started. Avoiding the pitfalls. Let's start with the formula myth. While preparing for the exam, if someone happens to tell you that all you have to do to pass the exam is to simply memorize all of the formulas because that is all you're going to run into on the exam, do not buy into it because you know what? It's simply not true. On the exam, you're going to run into much more situational questions than you are questions regarding the formulas. While taking your exam, you may be surprised to out of the 200 questions, maybe you only had 12 questions that dealt with the formulas, or maybe you had less. But I can guarantee you'll run into a majority of questions that deal with situations. And that's what's going to get you through the PMP exam. Don't read the PMBOK myth. If someone happens to tell you that you do not need to read the PMBOK guide while preparing for the exam, again, don't buy into it. Simply walk away because, again, that is not true. Remember, the foundation for the exam is based on the PMBOK guide. Although there may be some people out there that pass the exam without ever having to open the front cover of the PMBOK guide, which is fantastic. But those people are very few and very far between. A very small percentage of people compared to the people that had to and did read the PMBOK guide while preparing for the PMP exam. So you know what? Why risk it? Don't risk it. Simply be sure to read the PMBOK guide and understand the contents of the PMBOK guide, and that'll help you on the PMP exam. That brings us to the importance of the PMBOK glossary. The glossary is located in the back of the PMBOK guide, and it contains key terms and concepts that you're going to need to know for the PMP exam, but maybe those key concepts and terms are not fully discussed or explained within the chapters of the PMBOK guide. So do yourself a favor and spend some time going over the terms located in the glossary. Predetermined questions. I don't want you guys going into the PMP exam thinking that, you know what, I'm going to come across questions that I've seen before because I've taken 600 practice questions while preparing for the PMP exam. You know, I know there's many practice tests, mock tests, online quizzes for you guys to utilize in your preparation, and that's fantastic. It's a great tool and it's a great resource, and I recommend it. But there is a downside. Taking all those quizzes and tests and you guys are scoring really high might give you a false sense of security because you guys might think, wow, man, I'm doing really well. I come across these questions on the exam and I'm going to be just fine. Well, chances are you're not going to come across those questions or anything like those questions. But what you can take away from doing all those questions is learning the logic behind the answers for those questions. Simply knowing what the correct answer is, that's not enough. You all need to dig deeper and look for the reasoning behind the answer. Ask yourself, why is that the correct answer? And that is what's going to help you on the PMP exam. I am a PM, so I will do fine. You know what, don't go into this exam thinking that, you know what, I've been a PM for 50 years and I know how to answer these questions based on personal experience. Remember, you want to answer the questions based on the PMBOK way. My advice to you is that leave your personal experience at the door and tackle the exam from the PMBOK point of view. What would PMI say, and what would the PM do in this situation? Remember, put your PMI hat on while preparing and taking the PMP exam and leave your own personal experience and real-world experience at the door because that is not going to help you on the PMP exam. The PMI way will. Situation. The PMP exam is all about the situational type of questions. Simply memorizing what is in the PMBOK guide is not enough because you know what? You're going to want to know the reasoning behind the information. So you want to understand why. What is this information that I'm reading in the PMBOK guide and how can I apply it? Formulas and ETOs, very important. You're going to need to know more than just the names, but really, what do you use them for? What is the logic behind the formulas? As I mentioned earlier, simply memorizing the formulas is not enough, but it is a key part to it. By memorizing the formulas, you're not going to have to stress about trying to recall those formulas. During the exam, you'll be able to focus on the question at hand and how can I apply this formula to that given question. So knowing when, how, and what formula to apply are key and essential to your success on the PMP exam, not just memorizing the formula. You're going to want to know, let's say you come across a question where it's asking you about, at this point in time, am I ahead of schedule or am I behind schedule? Well, you know what? You're going to want to know, hey, I'm going to calculate the SPI for that one. Or if it asks you, are you ahead of budget, or are you over budget, or are you behind budget at this time? Bam, you're going to know, calculate CPI. So being able to grab those formulas in a split second is going to definitely help you. Remember, ask yourself, why and why not? Brings us to use all of the allotted 4 hours. This is very important. Remember, you don't get any bonus points. There's no extra benefit for finishing the exam early. So you know what? Why not take advantage of the full 4 hours? I know you might be thinking 200 questions, 4 hours, piece of cake, but you know what? That time flies during the exam. So here's some advice to you. When you first sit down for the exam and you start the exam, go through all the questions, pick all the low-hanging fruit and put an answer and answer those first. But as you go through the exam, you come across the harder questions, put an answer for that question and put it in the queue. And the reason I say that is because the only questions that are graded are questions that have an answer response to them. So if you don't have an answer to them, they don't get graded and they can't be counted. So even if you think the answer is incorrect, as long as you have something there, you got a 25% chance of getting them right, which is still higher than a 0%. So make sure you have an answer for every single question. And then you can always come back to those. And the reason why is, let's say you have all these questions sitting in the queue and you run out of time. Well, at least if you have an answer there, they're going to get graded. A couple of little test-taking strategies for when you're tackling questions are, remember these few things. Sometimes on the exam, you're going to come across a question that's a paragraph long. You're going to want to read the last sentence of the question first, because you'll find that maybe that is enough information for you to answer the question correctly. And a lot of times what they do is that last sentence is all you really need, and the rest of the stuff is full of fluff and distractor. So read the last question first and then go from there. Also, you should be able to narrow each question down to a 50-50. You should be able to eliminate 2 answer options right off the bat, leaving you with the 50-50, which is a lot easier than a 1 in 4. Also, when you come back to the questions that you think you're just guessing at, take another look at it. See if you can't put some kind of logic to that question, which will help you get a better answer than just guessing. And also, watch out for those except and those not questions. And when it comes to some of the cost questions, you may find that you don't even have to do any calculations. So try to solve those questions without actually calculating them. Saves yourself some time and some work. But again, I cannot stress enough. Make sure you take advantage of all 4 hours. Once you go through the exam, if you have time remaining, use that time to review. It is said that most times, your first response is the correct response. So go with a gut feeling if you have to, and only change that answer if you find some new information that leads you to believe that there's a better choice. Another thing to remember is, all 4 options might be the correct answer. You want to look for what is the best answer. But again, take advantage of every single minute that you're allowed. That brings us to plan your exam, which is very important. Remember, poor planning leads to poor execution. Create a game plan and come up with a strategy that will get you prepared for your game day. Setting your goal of obtaining your PMP certification is easy to accomplish. The hard part is, how do I get there? By avoiding the pitfalls, you will get there and you will obtain your PMP certification. I wish you guys the best of luck. And again, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Now go get your PMP.